Tamanna, we are on live.
Hello and assalamu alaikum to everyone here joining us live on StreamYard. I'm Tamanna Mia and I am your host for today. I am a presenter, reporter, and to you all, thank you very much for joining us. Now, we are going to be starting on Mr. Dewan Gous Sultan, who is a valiant freedom fighter, former member of Dhaka University Central Students' Union, writer and convener of 71 at Heart, Hirodoi Ekator, to inaugurate the conference and welcome him next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamanna Mia. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon from London. Before anything else, let me introduce our today's guest with our viewers. We have Chris Blackburn, Communication Director, European Bangladesh Forum from UK. Hello.
Hi.
We have Professor Dr. M. Habibe Millat, ex-MP Bangladesh, President, Global Center for Democratic Governance, Canada.
Hello.
We have Natalia Sineaeva-Pankowska from Never Again Association in Poland. We have Paulo Casaca, ex-member of European Parliament, Executive Director, South Asia Development Forum, Brussels. We have Professor Dr. S.M. Masum Billah, visiting researcher, University of Côte d'Azur in France. And last but not the least, Professor Dr. Zobaida Nasreen, visiting professor, University of Heilbronn, Germany. I think she is not here yet, but when she will come, we will introduce her. Dr. Nurul Nabi, valiant freedom fighter, scientist, winner of Ekushe Padak, the second highest civil award in Bangladesh, and President, Global Coalition for Secular and Democratic Bangladesh, USA, was our set speaker. But sorry to inform you that suddenly he has fallen ill, and by now maybe he is in hospital for treatment. He has got pneumonia. That's why he is not with us. Let us all pray for his speedy recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great opportunity for me to welcome you all who are now with us watching and who will be watching this program later to this international conference organized by 71 at Heart, Hridoye Ekattur. Let me welcome and convey my and our gratitude to our distinguished speakers who took the trouble of joining and speaking in front of us on this Saturday afternoon. They will be elaborately introduced in due course. They are joining from various parts of the world. My heartfelt thanks to our co-organizers, Global Center for Democratic Governance, Canada, South Asian Democratic Forum, Brussels, and Global Coalition for Secular and Democratic Bangladesh, USA. Also, I'd like to convey our utmost thanks to our respectable viewers, without whom this exercise would have no value at all. May I request you all to share this webinar, please. 71 at Heart, Hridoye Ekattur, is a civil society group composed of artists, literatures, journalists, professionals, writers, freedom fighters, and people of all walks of life of Bangladesh origin, now living in the UK. We stand in favor of a democratic Bangladesh, always uphold in our word and deeds the ideology of Bengali nationalism based on the glorious war of liberation and non-communalism. 71 at Heart is a non-political, non-profit entity. We promote inclusion, stand for protection of human rights, provide a voice to hold governments accountable for delivering public services, defending rule of law, and promoting participation and inclusive decision-making at all levels. Bangladesh is in a grave situation now. Since the illicitly changing of control in state power in August 2024, the country of 18 million people is continuously losing all advantages and benefits of statehood. An illegitimate, unelected, unconstitutional, thug, vengeful lot, headed by none less than a Nobel laureate, Professor Dr. Mohammad Yunus. And he's running the country with mob power and anarchy. There is no rule of law. Civil and political rights of the mass people is far cry. One section of people is getting full and biased support of the government. Keeping these in mind, we have organized this 2-day conference. Today, the first day, we are having this webinar, and we have named it Bangladesh Extremely Vulnerable with Violence and Vengeance. The webinar will investigate into political development and human rights violation since August 2024, terrorism and rise of religious extremism, state of democracy, rule of law, freedom and expression, persecution of selective and targeted groups, and continuous attack on culture and heritage. We hope to have a question and answer session at the end of our webinar, time permitting, of course. Our viewers are requested to write your comments, opinion, question on the chat box, and we shall try to address them. Tomorrow, we shall have a conference of participating parties of those who uphold the spirit of 1971, the glorious war of liberation. And finally, we shall make a declaration of outcome of our conference and guideline for our future activities. As to the situation in Bangladesh, I'd like to mention only one incident. This young radical, Mehdi Hassan, about 20, openly confessed at a police station in front of police officer that they have set fire on police station and killed a policeman. SI Santosh Chaudhary, a Hindu by faith, who practically was snatched from the army hands. Nothing happened to him. He went back home safely and easily. And due to public criticism about the incident, he was arrested the next day and released on bail in one day. And now these people and his associates are demanding that they should be allowed amnesty for whatever they have done in July 2024. And more surprisingly, the government of this Nobel Peace Laureate is now preparing a law to grant them amnesty. What happened in July 2024 is a terrorist aggression under the camouflage of so-called anti-discrimination movement. The real picture is coming out now, and the country is now rapidly sliding towards becoming a jihadi failed state, a safe haven for terrorists. Shrine of Sufis, churches, mandis are being attacked, ransacked, burnt and destroyed. Private properties, cultural centers, national heritage and historical establishments, and monuments are being destroyed even by previously declared announcement. People are being beaten to death in open daylight in front of public. And the administration and government is conveniently watching. This occupation government came to power capitalizing people's emotion. Now, after 18 months, they have announced a general election and a referendum, an exercise neither known to nor recognized by our constitution. And in any case, they are not entitled to perform such an exercise. On top of that, they have banned the largest political party, the Awami League from contesting this election. Not only that, any candidate who is not of their choice are being attacked, mobbed, or other means are being used to drive them away from contesting. Such an election, if at all takes place, which is still doubtful, shall bring no positive outcome. And so-called referendum will split the country into pieces. Our speakers will elaborate this matter in more detail. We, the people of Bangladesh, need help. We need help from democratic and consensus people of the world for returning to a democratic order. And that is the purpose of this conference. Our aim is to spread the real situation to the world and seek their help for a bailout. Dear viewers, I would like to request you all to share this webinar to your social groups and friends and bigger world, please. Ladies and gentlemen, before finish, I'd like to thank you for your support. Our support organizations and media groups, they have been such an integral part of this arrangement. My heartfelt thanks to my friends and associates and brothers and sisters in the 71 at heart who have been working so hard day in and day out to make this happen. And by saying that, I declare this international conference open. Joy Bangla. By this time, our other speaker, Dr. Zobaida Nasreen, a visiting professor in University of Heilbronn, Germany, has joined us. Welcome, Dr. Zobaida Nasreen. Let me remind you once again, please write your comment, opinion, and question in the chat box. We shall try to address them. Over to Tamanna. Please continue the webinar. Tamanna. I think she's having little connection problem. Let's have a look. Okay, I think I'll fill up the gap. First of all, let me call upon Chris Blackburn. Chris Blackburn is a strategist, renowned for his extensive experience in international relations and development. Chris has been spearheading the Padma Brahma initiative, aiming to channel prosperity from the Himalayas to Bay of Bengal. I don't know if he's going to cover it today. He is communication director of European Bangladesh Forum, UK. Mr. Blackburn will speak on human rights violation. Sorry? Mr. Blackburn will speak on human rights violation and rule of law. Chris Blackburn, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, thank you to Dewan, Sultan and 71 at Heart, the organisers and media partners for hosting this online conference on Bangladesh. I want to begin with a principle that lies at the very heart of international law. Justice is not measured by who is convicted, but how convictions are reached. That principle exists precisely for moments like the one Bangladesh is now living through. Moments of political rupture, moral exhaustion, and profound uncertainty about the future ahead. Bangladesh is repeatedly told it is entering a period of accountability. But accountability is not a slogan, it is a process, and its legitimacy is measured by fair trial standards, judicial independence, restraint, especially during a time of political transition. And this is where alarm bells are now ringing, not only from activists, but also from international legal authorities, human rights organizations, and the United Nations mechanisms. Fair trial standards are not optional. Under international law, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the requirements of a fair trial are clear: an independent and impartial tribunal, the presumption of innocence, adequate time and facilities to prepare defence, the equality of arms, public proceedings, reasoned judgments, and the right to appeal. It is in this context that the International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute, the IBAHRI, and through its director, Baroness Helena Kennedy, KC, issued a warning that could not have been any clearer. Open quotes. It is deeply troubling to see the justice system in Bangladesh misused to advance unfair and at times politically motivated trials. Every trial is a test of the state's commitment to justice and human rights, especially where allegations of serious international crimes are involved. Fundamental principles of a fair trial apply at all times, including during states of emergency and political transition. An independent and impartial judiciary is essential, and these principles must be upheld without exception. End quotes. Now, this is not partisan commentary. It is the professional judgment of one of the world's most respected legal voices, a damning indictment of the reform process under Muhammad Yunus and his interim government. But this isn't the only time international human rights organizations have poured scorn on Yunus' reforms process. In March last year, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the Committee to Protect Journalists and others signed a joint letter to Muhammad Yunus raising significant concerns about mob violence, attacks on minorities, and attacks on journalists and others. The ICTB, or the International Crimes Tribunal Bangladesh, has gone from moral authority to becoming a political instrument. The International Crimes Tribunal was created on the 1973 Act to prosecute atrocities committed during the 1971 Liberation War. That historical mandate gave it moral authority. But in the growing number of new cases, the question is no longer whether crimes occurred. The question is whether judicial mechanism is being reshaped into a tool of political setting, revenge, and which has ultimately led to mob violence. A tribunal created to give justice for the genocide of 1971 is now being weaponized by those who committed the genocide. That is how perverse Bangladesh's political scene and judicial scene is now at a standing point. Human Rights Watch and other groups have publicly called for amendments to ensure the tribunal meets fair trial and due process standards. Legal scholarship is increasingly focused on the hazardous drift and this growing reliance on trial in absentia, including in cases carrying the most severe penalties. That is not a procedural detail. It goes to the core of whether proceedings are recognizable as justice at all. Yunus promised reform in Bangladesh, but what they're delivering is something completely different. Because when transitional justice loses due process, it stops being transitional justice. It becomes revenge politics with courtroom aesthetics. Now, there is a case of Sharia Kabir, my friend, and as a friend of many of my distinguished guests today. The case of Sharia Kabir, the United Nations calls it arbitrary detention. If you want a single barometer of whether Bangladesh is moving forward towards pluralism or repression, we have to look at the case of Sharia Kabir. Kabir is a journalist, writer, and filmmaker, long associated with Bangladesh's struggle against communalism and religious extremism. His detention is not a marginal story. It is the test of whether dissenting voices, whether revered voices, can survive in the new political climate in Bangladesh. Last year, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention adopted opinion number 40/2025 concerning Sharia Kabir, finding his detention arbitrary and calling for a remedy. Now, this is an extraordinary moment. A UN mechanism is effectively saying that the detention violates international legal standards. If such a finding is ignored, then the message to journalists and civil society in Bangladesh is chilling. That you may be celebrated in one political era and criminalized in the next. Yunus's involvement in this unfair detention of Sharia Kabir should automatically disqualify him from seeking to be the next United Nations Secretary General. A perverse campaign which is backed by Elon Musk's representatives in Bangladesh, who have been working with Muhammad Yunus. Which leads me to another case, the case of Hassanul Haq Inu, where we've seen the criminalizing of political speech, repurposing the tribunal for revenge. When we look at the case of Hassanul Haq Inu, who is a secular political leader and a Liberation War veteran, his political life began in the 1960s and included a role in the Liberation War, during which he trained approximately 10,000 freedom fighters. Yet today he faces persecution before the tribunal on allegations framed as crimes against humanity. Now, this is not a claim based on rumor. Multiple reports have confirmed that they've accepted charges and connections surrounding basically free speech. The core concern, and this matters for anyone who cares about the rule of law, is this is how the case was constructed. Media and legal experts believe the case does not primarily rest on direct participation in violence or command authority, but instead it leans heavily on political consultations, statements, media interviews, and alleged communications, which have been recast as incitement and command responsibility. If political speech becomes the backbone of crimes against humanity charges, then a precedent is created that can be used against anyone, and that's whether you're a left, right, secular, Islamist, the next time that power changes hands in Bangladesh. And this is precisely how the cycles of revenge become institutionalized, the very things that Muhammad Yunus was supposed to address. So we get to conflict of interest and credibility collapse in Bangladesh. One of the gravest credibility issues is the perception that the tribunal has now been politically captured, including through leadership decisions. We've seen that basically the prosecution is now Jamaat-e-Islami, former lobbyists, and their defenders have now become prosecutors. Reporting has noted controversies over appointments within this tribunal ecosystem, including that key figures, as I've previously said, operated in highly partisan contexts and in the early tribunal proceedings. The Justice Observatory Bangladesh recent appeal raised this conflict of interest concern and suggests that the tribunal has begun to resemble an extension of the prosecution rather than an independent arbitrator. When courts are perceived as instruments of factional power, they lose what courts require the most, and that is public and international trust. When the public loses trust in courts, the street then becomes the court, and the cycle continues. So in conclusion, Bangladesh still has a choice. It can choose accountability rooted in law or revenge disguised as justice. It can preserve the tribunal's legitimacy by aligning it with fair trial norms, or it can destroy that legitimacy by using it as a vehicle of political settlement, which is what it is today. As Baroness Helena Kennedy reminded us, every trial is a test. Bangladesh is being tested now, not on rhetoric, but on principle. The world is watching. More importantly, Bangladesh's own future generations are watching. Justice without fairness is not justice at all. It is merely power wearing a robe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris Blackburn. I reiterate, every trial is a test. And you very rightly said, accountability is a process. And Bangladesh have a choice of having accountability or rule of law. Tamanna, are you all right? Can you call upon the next speaker,
Yes,
please?
thank you so much. Thank you so much to Chris Blackburn. We really appreciate your commentary and words today. Now, we are going to move on to our next distinguished speaker, which may introduce Professor Dr. M. Habibe Millat is a medical doctor and cardiothoracic surgeon. He's involved in numerous national and international organizations and is renowned for his multidisciplined knowledges. Professor Millat was a member of Bangladesh Parliament for 10 years. Now he's president of Global Centre for Democratic Governance, a Canada-based think tank. He will now speak on persecution of various types of numerically minority groups. We welcome you and We're very pleased to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tamanna Mia. And also I thank Mr. Dewan Gous Sultan, who is a veteran freedom fighter, also a former member of Dhaka University Central Student Union, now organizing Heart of Ekattur, Rio Ekattur, in as a social organization, and also organizing the event. Distinguished speaker, guest, and audience who are listening or watching this program, thank you all, because this is the time, is a critical time for Bangladesh. After the changeover of power in August 2024, there are so many changes happening in Bangladesh that it is unbelievable, and the damage happening which may be repairable if the international community and stakeholder doesn't keep eye into that. As you know, that persecution of various types of minority groups in Bangladesh, this unbelievable increase in over the last 17 months. If I give a small statistics, that 2,400 plus incidents happened in over the last 17 months, and over 2,000 incidents happened from August 4th to August 20 in 16 days in 2024. That includes murder, torture, destroy the property, arson, assault, violence, almost rape, sexual assault, everything was there. As you know, that even in the last 18 days, 8 Hindu minority has been killed. And the judicial system in our country is a bystander. Sometimes the false allegation, false blasphemy allegation, for that they do swift arrest and prosecution without any forensic evidence. On the other hand, the physical attack on temples, the idols, or minors' properties, the law is very slow, and they usually do not want to take initiative to investigate. It's not only the Hindu community, they are about 7 to 8% in the country at the moment. But there is also Buddhists, Christians, Ahmadiyya Muslims, people lives in hill trucks. So they are all minorities in our country. And as I said, that in December, on the Christmas day, 25th of December 2024, about 17 churches were attacked. Few of them were burned, damaged, or some sort of humiliation to that Christian people. And also Buddhist, the temple were not spared. If we see that the indigenous people, at least 7 has been killed in over last few months, and more than 2 million acres of minority owned land and property has been taken by the other people. This is because of what's happened in August 2024. As you know, that more than 700 religious extremists were released from the prison. Approximately 6,500 firearms were looted. 650,000 bullets are looted at the same time. That those has not been recovered yet. This government has released more than 300 militant, those who are accused of serious crime against humanities. And these people are creating problem. Even if you see the death of Hadi, one of the student leader, the Ansarullah Bangla team, this is a terrorist organization which is banned in Bangladesh and many countries in the world. their leader, their convener, went to that meeting and gave a provocative speech. And after that, what happened? The Prothom Alo, the Daily Star newspaper Bhavan was burned, Bangabandhu Bhavan was burned, and there was anarchy all over the country in front of the law enforcement authority, police, BJP, including army. They are not taking any initiative, or if they are not taking any initiative, because whether government has asked them not to take initiative or they are out of control. The law and order situation in Bangladesh for everybody, not only the minorities, they're tortured, their properties, temples has been destroyed, burned out. We know all those things. But as a whole, the law and order situation is the lowest in 55 years of history. In first 12 months, 637 people were killed in mob lynching. In last 16 months, 116 minorities, most of them are Hindus, but there are few Muslim, there are few Ahmadiyya, and also 2 Christian, 9 Buddhist, and 11 indigenous people has died because of mob violence. There is no rule of law in the country. And as Chris was talking about the court, there is no rule of law in our country. So court is like controlled by the government or the Jamaat-e-Islam or Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Whatever they want, the outcome is that. And they filed more than 4,000 cases during this time, all are murder cases. I know one murder cases, as you know, that somebody were mentioning that 15 police officers were killed in one police station. There is my hometown, Shirajganj, in Enayatpur. There was a judicial case, and blamed was the 4 Awami League leaders plus 6,000 unnamed accused. That means they can arrest anybody within this 6,000. And as the Jamatis, the students and the protester vandalized, looted, arson the police station and killed them, the case was given against Awami League leaders. That is happening in the Bangladesh at the moment. As you know, also minorities are also accused using the Digital Security Act, which has been changed over the last few months. And they're targeting that. They're targeting because of their thinking that minority voices must be suppressed and in the guise of religion. Thus, they're provocating the religious sentiment. Actually, there is, when they do the investigation, recently one Hindu guy died because he said that he was talking against the Islam religion, but he didn't do anything, but he was killed. So this is the happening at the moment worldwide. I'll request you all to raise your voice. As you mentioned, Shahriar Kabir, he's 80 plus gentleman. He is in the prison. He was fighting for genocide in Bangladesh, which happened in 1971. But he was in the prison because of the anti-liberation force, Jamaat-e-Islam. Their supporters are in power at the moment. And that's why they are taking all the pro-liberation forces into the prison. And as you see the election, Awami League was blamed for election as many party hasn't participated in the election at that time. But the forthcoming election, within less than 30 days time, the oldest political party of the country, the most popular political party in the country, Bangladesh Awami League, 14 parties alliance, all has been kept out of election. More than 50% voters supports these parties. So how will they do a credible election without participating these people? So this is a situation they are creating by the, as you know, that US aids and promoted this movement with paying 29 million directly and 21 million indirectly. And also Volker Turk, the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner, he also sent a message to the Chief of Army at that time in August that army shouldn't interfere with anything, then they will stop taking people to the peacekeeping mission. So it's not only the local conspiracy, it involved international player as well. So we do not want to involve in that conspiracy, but what we want, justice, rule of law, protection of minorities. That's what really we want. And for that, we want support from the international community. And you are the leaders of the international community. Please help Bangladesh to go back to secularism, go back to democracy, go back to rule of law. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. M. Habibe Millat, for your really enlightening words about the democracy of Bangladesh. Now, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Natalia Sineaeva-Pankowska is a scholar and practitioner specialising in genocide education, memorialisation and minority rights, a Rotary Peace Fellow and OHCHR Minority Fellow. She has worked with the Polin Museum and the Never Again Association and co-created Minorities for Peace. She's based in Poland and she will speak on the freedom of expression, press and journalists. We welcome you very much to this webinar. Thank you.
Can I just butt in for a moment, please, Tamanna? We have got some very good comments. So after Natalia, if you could read out one or two comments, which are just select one or two and read them out. Thank you very much, those who have sent the comment. Maybe we won't be able to read all of them, but we'll try to read one or two. Sorry for the interference. Natalia, please.
Good afternoon. And first of all, let me thank the organizers, speakers, respected freedom fighters, participants, and journalists. And it is an honor to be with you today. What is happening in Bangladesh resonates with our own experience of Eastern Europe, and we are deeply concerned. Bangladesh faces similar challenges. Freedom of expression is not only about today, it is also about memory, its recognition, and it's also about future. And there are many ways to silence this, including suppression, erasing narratives, or selecting stories. It is a society that's still dealing with aftermath of genocide, which happened not so long ago in 1971, has not only been fully addressed yet. And journalists, writers who critically work on this are censored, silenced, intimidated, and arrested. Both contexts I mentioned show how state, how power can control narrative and how they can eliminate critical voices. Silencing and eliminating journalists is similar to ignoring genocide or atrocity survivors and their stories. And it makes it much harder for society to deal with its own history. Freedom of expression is important for dealing with the past. This happened in Eastern Europe years ago, and it is happening in Bangladesh today. In 1997, the United Nations identified 4 pillars in the holistic process of dealing with the past. They represent what every society needs to do to heal after atrocities and after the genocide. The right to know, which focuses on providing access to information and documentation of atrocities. The right to justice, addressing the need to bring the perpetrators of atrocities to justice. The right to reparations, provide victims with an opportunity to seek justice and compensation, and the guarantee of reoccurrence, education, and memorialization to ensure that violence not happen again. And in this context today, I'd like to highlight a renowned Bangladeshi journalist, filmmaker, writer, and children's author, Shahryar Kabir, a humanist. And Shahryar Kabir is someone who contributed significantly to the process of dealing with the past after the war and genocide, strengthening all 4 pillars by documenting war crimes, atrocities, pressing for accountability, and promoting religious pluralism. And I remember how we met Shahryar Kabir in Dhaka for the first time, and it was in 2019. And we went to Bangladesh to visit our friend from the Buddhist community. And I also attended a conference, and when our Buddhist friend wanted to introduce us to Shahryar Kabir, whom he admired for his books and his work on human rights and post-genocide accountability. Shahryar Kabir has always focused on values of an inclusive society and pluralism, but not as a politics as such. And what is happening now under the current government in Bangladesh is very disturbing. And Shahryar Kabir has been detained since September 2024 for his critical voice, and numerous fabricated charges of murder and so-called crimes against humanity have been initiated against him. And he has not only been silenced by his detention, but humiliated with no access to proper medical care, wheelchair, as he cannot walk properly. And it is an illustration of how critical voices can be eliminated from public discourse and how it can impact the whole process of dealing with the past in such post-genocide society as Bangladesh. And when journalists and writers were silenced, Bangladesh cannot implement the pillars of dealing with the past, which was proposed by the United Nations, because it impacts all aspects of life. In his last interview in August 24, which I read, Shahryar Kabir mostly spoke about values. He spoke about values and his concern for these values under the current political circumstances. The liberation war values on which Bangladesh was founded, secularism, that means religious pluralism in the context of Bangladesh. And I learned much about the history of Bangladesh from Shahryar Kabir as many others. And at the same time, Shahryar Kabir is a global hero, someone who is very knowledgeable, not only about his own country, the region, but much beyond borders, observing democratic changes in our Eastern Europe. The fall of a Berlin Wall, meeting the first democratically president of Poland, Lech Walesa, and publishing a book about him. And our last conversation with Shahryar Kabir was in Dhaka when we met, just before the known events. And it was about history of Bangladesh, about religious pluralism, interreligious harmony, minorities, also about Poland, about everything. And a prisoner of conscience by Amnesty International and recognized already in 2001, Shahryar Kabir has always been on side of those who are marginalized, excluded, suppressed, be they minorities, indigenous people, or Rohingya refugees. And at the moment, we don't see any attempt from those in power in Bangladesh today to care and to engage in the honest and inclusive process of dealing with the past. Not only journalists are silenced, but there are also reports of growing attacks on minority communities, which is very troubling, as it was already mentioned earlier by Dr. Millat. Minorities are also silenced. They're also excluded by fear of persecution. They cannot speak up. And also Bangladesh significantly dropped in the Global Peace Index produced by the Institute for Economics and Peace. It was on the place 97 and now more than 33 points down among all countries in the world. And by referring to and covering themselves with a previous government, current authorities of Bangladesh simply transfer guilt and responsibility from themselves to others. And this is all well-known tactic used by atrocity and genocide deniers and distorters. And we know from history, there are examples of silence in Eastern Europe, in Africa, in Asia, and in other continents. When nobody reacted, we waited for any developments, and when it was too late to react. And despite of our solidarity, together with organizations such as Genocide Watch, Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention and Human Security, South Asia Democratic Forum, the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism, and many others in support of Shahryar Kabir, there is also little support from the international community, which stays indifferent. And when journalists and writers are silenced, society lost not only critical voices, they lost the ability to deal with the past in an honest way and to build sustainable peace. And there are many other political prisoners and honest journalists who are now unjustly detained and silent in Bangladesh. And it's our responsibility and task to raise awareness and to draw the attention to the international community to grave human rights violations in Bangladesh, to silence and indifference. Silence critical voices, silence journalists is not only about human rights, it's not only about freedom and violations of human rights, but it is attack on memory. on justice and on inclusive society. And I would like to end and I would like to conclude and address the international community and people in power in Bangladesh by quote of a Polish Auschwitz survivor, Marian Turski. Don't be complacent. Wherever you see the past being misused for current political purposes, don't be complacent. Whenever any kind of minority is discriminated against, the essence of democracy lies in the rule of the majority. But democracy itself lies in the fact that rights of minorities must be protected. Don't be complacent. Whenever any government violates already existing common social contracts, remains faithful to the 11th commandment, never be a bystander. Because if you become complacent before you know, it's some kind of Auschwitz will suddenly fall from nowhere and befall you and your descendants. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words, and I think people will remember about not being a bystander. I mean, what a set of words to end on. Thank you very much, Natalia Sineaeva-Pankowska. We have got some comments to read. If I could ask my convener to read them out for me, please. So we have got some comments. If I could ask my convener to just read them, the chair to read them out for me, that would be great. We have got a comment where we have one from Samirun Chowdhury. Please be our guest speaker for this event. I'm proud of the guests. It's our pleasure to have you join the team. We're really appreciative of your time in this program. Thank you so much. There is a lot of comments on Facebook. Lots of people are giving their views, and we really appreciate all of your views. We will all take them into account. We will be moving on to our next speaker. I'm happy to welcome Professor Dr. Zobaida Nasreen, a professor at the Department for Anthropology, University of Dhaka. She's a writer and academic, now a visiting professor at the University of Heilbronn, Germany. She was a Fulbright scholar at Rice University, USA. Her area of interest includes, among others, anthropology of violence, sexuality and masculinity, and identity politics and indigeneity. She will also speak on the attack on culture and heritage. We're pleased to have you in this webinar today.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. And I'm really honored and pleased to be with you in the same panel. Thank you, host, and thank you, my panelist. Yes, I will talk, and I will limit my discussion with the context of ashes of pluralism, cultural cleansing, religious transformation, and the politics of belonging in Bangladesh after 5th August 2024. Cultural heritage preserves the material tracks of historical coexistence while shaping the imaginative boundaries of national belonging. In moments of political rupture, heritage sites, monuments, and artistic space often become targets of contestation as competing actors seek to assert authority over memory, morality, and identity. In Bangladesh, what has happened really? The period following 5th August 2024 marked by regime change, quote and unquote regime change, and transitional governance had witnessed widespread attacks on cultural heritage. This includes the destruction of liberation era monuments, vandalism of Sufi shrines, mazars, dargahs, and gharanas, assaults on minority religious institutions, and the disruption of folk and artistic spaces. While heritage violence is not new in Bangladesh, of course, the pattern, selectivity, and ideological coherence of recent attacks indicate more than spontaneous unrest. Yes, I examine it in a systematic way, and I also go through the systematic attacks on cultural heritage in Bangladesh following the political transition of 5th August 2024. Drawing on political reports, civil society monitoring, media accounts, and preliminary data set, I argue that heritage destruction within border dynamics of identity, nationalism, religious transformation, and post-national governments has been changed and has been rapidly turned to a new era. My analysis actually highlights the selective targeting of monuments, syncretic Sufi shrines, minority sites, and artistic space as a form of cultural cleansing aimed to reconfiguring national belonging. Particular attention I will give in my will be given in my discussion to the long-term displacement of Sufi-influenced Bengali Islam by Salafi reformist currents, which provide the ideological foundation for contemporary iconoclasm. And I further talk about the role of Tawhidi Janata style mobilizations and associated mob violence, alongside the state's characterization of these actors as a pressure group to explore how moral authority, crowd dynamics, and institutional ambiguity convert, converge to produce structural vulnerability for pluralist heritage. I argue in my discussion that, these developments constitute a form of cultural cleansing driven by the convergence of political instability, moralized crowd mobilization, and a longer historical process, the gradual replacement of Sufi synchronic religious culture by Wahhabi Salafi Reformism. Uh, and heritage destruction is thus analyzed not as episodic violence but as a strategic reconfiguration of culture, legitimacy, and culture and national belongings. Now I just will uh, tell you about the why the monuments of the liberation are being targeted. Monuments commemorating the 1971 Liberation War and figures such as Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman function as the material anchors of national memory. I repeat, national material anchors of national memory. That term actually I coined from the scholar Nora. She referred this term in 1989. Their destruction after August 2024 represents a direct assault on the secular nationalist foundation of the Bangladesh state. These acts function as mnemonic interventions seeking to delegitimize liberation era narratives and recalibrate the moral geography of the nation. I repeat, recalibrate the moral geography of the nation. In this sense, monument destruction is not simply anti-state but anti-pluralist, challenging the ideological interpinning of Bangladesh's post-independence identity. Historically, Islam in Bengal developed through Sufi networks, shrine-based devotional practices, and deep interaction with local customs, Hindu traditions, and folk cosmologies. Sufi shrines function not only as religious sites but as cultural institutions, spaces of music, poetry, healing, and intercommunal interaction. The syncretic religious ecology underpinned Bangladesh's broader cultural pluralism, embedding tolerance and ambiguity within everyday religious life. Our recent decades, this pluralist religious landscape has been increasingly challenged by Wahhabi and Salafi reformist ideologies, emphasizing spiritual literalism, iconoclasm, and the rejection of shrine-based practices as bidat or shirk. The replacement of Sufi authority by reformist Islam is not merely theological, rather, it represents a culture realignment, redefining what forms of religious expression are considered legitimate within the nation. I want to make you remember that on August 5, 2024, the 140-year-old home of famed Baul singer Rahul Anand was tortured in Dhanmondi area, and this mob destroyed 3,000 of his handmade musical instruments. And Rahul Anand actually had to leave the country immediately, and now he is in Paris. The post-August 24 attacks on Sufi shrines must be understood within this longer trajectory of religious transformation. Shrines associated with Sufism and Baul tradition are appropriate uh, disproportionately targeted, reflecting a logic of cultural purification. 44 vandalism indicates targeting 40 Sufi shrines, mazars, and dargahs have been officially reported to uh, Bangladesh police since 4th August 2024. These include acts of vandalism, looting, arson, and attacks on devotees. The Bangladesh Baul and Folk Artists Association reported that 321 Baul performances had been forcibly cancelled since October 2024, with 91 of those in Dhaka due to the threats came from Tawhid Janota. Prominent Baul leader Maharaj Abul Sarkar was arrested in November 2025 for alleged blasphemy. Following his arrest, supporters conducting a human chain were attacked by Tawhid Janota. At least four Baul singers were reported seriously wounded in a single attack by a mob on the outside Dhaka. Their, their destruction is therefore both material and symbolic, signaling an effort to erase syncretic Islam from the public sphere and replace it with a more rigid, exclusionary religious order. Attacks on Hindu temples and minority cultural space further illustrate how heritage violence operates to redefine belonging. Minority heritage function as both historical record and social infrastructure. Its destruction communicates exclusion and reinforces a model of conditional pluralism wherein minorities may exist only within narrowly circumscribed cultural boundaries. This process, of course, mirrors the religious transformation described above as syncretism is delegitimized, mind visibility becomes increasingly precarious. A defining feature of post August 2024 violence is the emergence of Tawhid Janata as a mobilizing moral category. Rather than a centralized organization, Tawhid Janata operates as a discursive and affective frame, translating reformist religious ideology into collective action. The interim government description of Tawhid Janata as a pressure group has profound implications. It reframes moralized violence as civic expression. It limits law enforcement intervention. It acknowledges informal religious authority is politically consequential. This framing effectively normalizes extra legal action in the cultural domain. Tawhidi Janata style mobilizations often manifest as a mob violence characterized by rapid formation, diffusion of responsibility, and symbolic targeting. Shrines, monuments, and minority heritage sites become focal points precisely because of their representational power. Beyond monuments and shrines, the post transition period has seen attacks on art galleries, folk music venues, and bowl performance spaces. These sites sustain intangible cultural heritage dependent on continuity and community practice. Their disruption interrupts cultural transmission, producing long term damage that is less visible but equally profound. Across domains, heritage deconstructs function as symbolic violence that uh, uh, Pierre Bourdieu also indicated, delegitimating pluralist cultural forms while naturalizing reformist and exclusionary ideologies. The convergence of Wahhabi influenced moral discourse, Tawhid Janata mobilization, mob violence, and selective state enforcement produces a decentralized yet coherent process of cultural cleansing. The events following August 2024 reveal the fragility of pluralist memory under condition of political and religious transformation. Heritage, once a shared repository of coexistence, has become a battleground where competing visions of Islam, culture, and nationhood are violently negotiated. The replacement of Sufism by Wahhabi reformism narrows the moral imagination of the nation, reshaping not only religious practice but the very terms of cultural legitimacy. I have argued in my discussion that post August 2024 heritage violence in Bangladesh reflects a multi layered process of cultural cleansing driven by political rupture, weekend institutional protection, the long term displacement of Sufi syncretic Islam by Wahhabi reformism. Tahidi Janata has a mobilized crowd mobilization mechanism and state framing that legitimizes informal religious authority. Understanding this dynamics is very essential for heritage protection, cultural policy, and the defense of pluralism in transitional societies like in Bangladesh. And I think I should stop here. And if you have any question, comment, I really appreciate this. And I'm here also to respond to you.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time, Professor Dr. Zobaida, Nasreen. Yeah, we will be welcoming questions towards the end of the session where our chair will be conducting this. Now, if I can move on, I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Mr. Paulo Casquia. He's a Portuguese politician, a former MEP for over 10 years. He's the author of several books on the economic and social affairs of human rights and issues on religious fanaticism. He is a founder and executive director of South Asian Development Forum. He will speak on the rise of terrorism and religious extremism. Can I please welcome you as our distinguished guest? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is a very timely discussion, a very important one. I have been following the situation in Bangladesh quite some time, not as much time as others, like, for instance, Chris, who is perhaps one of the longest observers of the reality. And what I think is essential is to understand that we are really on a jihadist takeover, in front of a jihadist takeover. There was a lot of illusion on this because, mainly because of Mr. Yunus, Nobel Peace Prize, that would mean something different. I think that right now these illusions are gone. I mean, the party that he has been creating, or anyway sponsoring directly or indirectly, appears as just one of the branches of the Jamaat-e-Islam in the electoral process, and I think that more and more people are understanding what we are facing. And what we are facing is really a situation of terror, of pure terror. Chris already addressed the issue of the ICT. The ICT started by reversing completely what was the object, what was its object, because its object was the genocide in 1971. And the first thing that was done was to reverse it, was to say, oh no, it is, we are going to examine everything, and actually we are going to focus on the events of July, August 2024. That means the events of those that were exactly contesting the genocide. And their priorities are quite obvious. I mean, Shahryar Kabir. I mean, what is Shahryar Kabir? Shahryar Kabir is obviously an intellectual with an immense work in many, many fields, but he is the face of the call for justice of the genocide perpetrators. That's why he's there. And the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention that Chris already mentioned developed its sentence on the issue. The group said clearly that he should be immediately released and compensated for all the wrongdoings that had already been done. But the working group, he had access. I mean, the ICT, the Bangladesh authorities did share with the working group the accusations, and of course the working group said that these are absolutely unbelievable accusations. I mean, he is being accused of using his right of expression, that he is criticizing the genocide. That's it. And actually, they did not only disregard the sentence, but they decided to advance and to speed the process, and he was present in front of a judge on January the 12th, exactly with these accusations. What is said in the television that was not in agreement with the jihadist doctrine of those that now are commanding the tribunal. So that's his crime. His crime is to face the jihadist. Regarding the freedom of expression, I was really flabbergasted when I saw the director of the Daily Star saying, after his journal was set on fire, and apparently only because the military managed to make a deal with the terrorists. Okay, don't burn them alive. I mean, allow them to escape. Otherwise, they would have been burned alive. I mean, in the wake of this, he said there is no issue of freedom of expression any longer. The issue is the right to live, to exist. I mean, when a figure like him, that, by the way, was one of the most outspoken critics of the Awami League. I mean, I was in Dhaka during the elections, and I was very surprised. In the hotel, the Daily Star was in English was distributed to all the guests, and the Daily Star was not only a paper of the opposition, but was actually making all sorts of accusations, most of them completely lunatic, to the government. And it was there. It was being distributed even to the foreign observers. I mean, so the freedom, they said, oh, no, they are trying to interfere, the government, and so on and so on. And, I mean, I'm not saying that the government was perfect, but I mean, at least you could even, see it among the tourists in the hotel that were going to supervise the election. So you just have to see that to understand. I mean, there is no freedom of expression. Jamaat has been taking care of all the crucial instances of power. The ICT is one of them, but the other is schools. And I was there observing the elections, and what I saw was at the most important part of the process, that is the voting process in the school, was perfect, brilliant. I mean, some things were not good, mainly the fact that it was allowed for parties to be in the vicinity of the poll stations. This is something that should have never been allowed. That's one of the things I said and repeated. And regarding the transparency of the procedure after the voting, I mean, the counting of the voting should have been at open door. It's a principle. Nothing should be hidden. Although, I mean, all the representatives of the parties were allowed, but the door was closed. That should have not been done. And the results should be announced immediately, on the door. That's standard procedure. That was not done. And of course, this allows for, after the elections, you cannot assure if what was seen when the votes were counted were exactly the same as in the end. But right now, I mean, the situation is much, much worse. I mean, it's uncomparable. There is no reform. There is a counter-reform. There is going back. This situation regarding, for instance, the minorities. I mean, now the Vatican, in its very important, the Pope, all the states, I mean, the Pope as well, the sort of foreign affairs ministry, and in its speech in the beginning of the year, highlighted Bangladesh side by side with Nigeria, with Mozambique, as extremely concerning for religious violence. I mean, what else should we want? So the situation, it's absolutely impossible to think of any sort of free, fair, and participated elections. I mean, they even went to the point of forbidding the Awami League from contesting it. But I mean, after arresting tens of thousands of its leaders, murdering countless, either in prisons or out of prisons, producing fake procedures of assassinations for the tens of thousands as well. I mean, it would. It's a. One cannot even consider this possibility. So the situation is terrible, and in spite, of course, we have seen a lot of those who said, "Okay, well, it's now we had Yunus Nobel Peace Prize, so let's give him a chance." I mean, well, it's reasonable to say that for those who are not very much engaged in the process. And a lot of the observers and a lot of the actors said that 1.5 years ago. Okay, now, I mean, only those who really are nearly lost cases. I mean, the diplomacies, I mean, the Western diplomacies are really the worst. The European Union declaration is absolutely, it's laughable. You know, I mean, I'm a bit ashamed as a former European parliamentarian to see what has been said in the name of the European Union. It's absolutely atrocious. But I mean, whoever has a bit of sense, I mean, the Vatican, which is does not have any stake in Bangladesh. I mean, well, of course, there are Christians and the problem exists, but that's no big stake. The Vatican is an essential tool, and you know, all these NGOs, observers. I mean, it's quite obvious that there are no conditions, and so the issue is more and more: how can we revert to a democratic process in Bangladesh? Not saying that everything was perfect. Of course, nothing was. Things were not perfect in Bangladesh. Of course not. Not in Bangladesh and nowhere in the world, obviously. So, okay. But how to revert to something that is as the minimum conditions? That's the big question. I doubt that there will be a step further on February on this direction. This constitutional referendum, by the way, I mean, it's a norm that any constitution is approved, is not a secret committee that approves it. I mean, it's a parliament, an elected parliament, and then there might be a referendum, of course, but there was no elected parliament to approve all these points that appeared by this nominated commission. So it makes absolutely no sense in the democratic sense. And the issue is that one. How can we come back to the democratic way? The democratic and, of course, the humane and the development, because the Bangladesh situation is a catastrophe in all of these domains. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words. We really appreciate it, Mr. Paulo Casaca. We will now be moving on to our last and final speaker and distinguished guest, Professor Dr. S.M. Masum Billah. He is a scholar, writer, and academic. His interests are legal history, law and literature, constitutionalism. And he is a professor of the Department of Law, Jagannath University, Bangladesh, and is now a visiting professor at University of Cots d'Azur, France. Professor Billah will speak on international covenant on civil and political rights and vindictive use of ICT and a suggested way forward for Bangladesh. After the speaker, we will be going into a Q&A session with the chair, Dewan Gous Sultan, and we will be closing the session hopefully at 4 o'clock. So please, can I welcome you with us today? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Tamanna, am I audible?
Yes, you are. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
As the last speaker, obviously, I have some advantages. I have had the opportunity and privilege of listening to all the speakers, and I will fruitfully borrow some of the ideas already spoken to this at this August conference. At the very outset, let me record my profuse thanks to the Gous Sultan and Hridaye Ekattur, 71 is at our heart. Actually, that's the defining fabric of our nationhood. And as a law academic, I tell you, my legal approach, my interpretation and understanding of law surrounds the ideals and the spirit of 1971. Even my understanding of rule of law, constitutionalism, also surrounds the spirit of 1971, the teachings of Father of the Nation, and the idea of non-communalism, pluralism, as rightly advocated and stressed upon by my previous speakers. Thank you very much to Professor Habibe, Millat, Chris, Natalie, Professor Zobaida, Nasreen, and obviously to Paulo for raising all those issues. And I am in complete agreement with what you have said. And in addition to that, keeping the topic allocated for me, I will add something more. I also want to remember Dr. Nurun Nobi, the valiant freedom fighter, who has not been able to join, but I have also been asked to say a few things about his topic as well and to make some concluding remarks. But I'm pretty sure that it will formally be concluded by our director, Dewan Gous Sultan. Now, I would say 3 words about the Yunus regime: use, abuse, and non-use of law. I term it as the exercise, ideal exercise of autocratic legalism, where law is being used as a weapon of politics, of vindicating the sordid political purpose. And they are holding the trials of crimes against humanity, but in parallel, they are offering this impunity, immunity, indemnity towards the perpetrators of the 2024 perpetrators of the crimes. So they are equally crime, they are equally responsible. So this is one thing. Second thing is the investigation, international, transparent, fair, independent, acceptable, has not been taken place. That was the sine qua non. To the utter surprise, we have seen this redefined tribunal by law professor, quote and unquote, law advisor, Professor Asif Nazrul. This ICT has relied largely, heavily upon the report of the OACHR, heavily flawed report, biased report, which has been effectively refuted by a research team. And right at this moment, there is a press briefing session going on in New Delhi, refuting the reports made by the OACHR and Volker Turk. And this report was actually not mandated by the UN Human Rights Council, was commissioned by the Yunus government itself, who is a party to the conflict. It's a serious violation of principle of natural justice. No person can be a judge of his own cause. Right. And they haven't spoken about the massacre, about the widespread killing that has taken place in the post-5th August settings. Out of the 1,400 people reportedly have died, the OACHR report itself has mentioned that majority of them have taken place after 5th August. And they have kept silent, haven't spent a single word about what is taking place, what would be the fate about these people who have been murdered in the post-August scenario. So they have relied upon a concocted evidence. So if an acceptable international investigation does not take place, how can you say that a trial has been neutral, a trial has fulfilled all the due processes? That's the main question I want to throw to the audience today, those who are listening today. Now, we are saying that there is this standard of ICCPR 1966, Article 14, the due process clause, has been echoed by Bangladeshi Constitution in Article 31. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, property, body, reputation, save in accordance with law and save in accordance with law. Now, what has taken place? They have totally changed the idea of international criminal law. And I would say, and argue, I have spoken elsewhere, that the whole gamut, whole idea of the core principles of international criminal law has been redefined and changed and reversed by the domestic International Crimes Tribunal of Bangladesh in 2024. As rightly mentioned by Paulo Casaca, that it was originally designed to prosecute the 1971 crimes, right? Now this quote and unquote interregnum government led by Professor Yunus, they have changed this law, a substantive international criminal statute, merely by executive order, out of their own whims. You know how many times? 4 times. And 2 times within a single week. And they change it whatever the manner they like it. They have added a clause that if a person is simply charged, they will be debarred from fighting election, competing in the election, meaning it is targeted towards the Awami League members. You know? So they are violating the established principles of the presumption of innocence doctrine recognized by the universal criminal jurisprudence. That's number one. Secondly, they have totally changed the threshold of crimes against humanity. They are telling, well, Bangladesh law has reflected the ICC statutes, Article 7 standard, elements of crimes, widespread and systematic attack. If it is widespread, fine. How does it, an attack of systematic, how does that fulfill the criteria of systematic? If it is systematic, from whose part it is systematic? Is it from the part of the government law enforcing agency or from the proponents of the meticulous designers, himself admitted by the chief advisor in the UN General Assembly side session, in a Clinton session. So you see that this is a change which is not acceptable. Crimes against humanity is telling, if there is a conflict between Bangladesh statute and the ICC statute and other international statute, Bangladesh law will prevail. And what is that law? They are changing. They are changing in 2024 according to their own whim. And what they have changed also the scope and applicability of the law. They are telling that we are making this amendment today, making it applicable for the 2009 to 2024 crimes. Meaning they are also changing the fundamental criminal law idea of nullum crimen, the principle of retroactivity. So I can tell you 100 of points which is running against international criminal law. Who are the judges? The judges, none of the judges, the three-member judges, Tribunal 1, who has handed down the judgment against Sheikh Hasina. The judgment is out just yesterday or 1.5 months later of reading out the judgment on 17th November. It doesn't add anything. It has totally changed the idea of command responsibility. Misapplication of command responsibility. You are misusing the threshold of command responsibility in a political context and applying to a political leader who is struggling to deal with a rioting situation, and you are attaching superior responsibility and commanding responsibility without ensuring the nexus between the Prime Minister and the field level officers. And there is this criminal law, penal law, by which, according to which the law enforcing agency, the police authorities work. What the hell on earth the Prime Minister has to order to use lethal weapon where there are thresholds and stages of applying criminal law in order to deal with the situation? The chief question is whether the law enforcing agencies applied the forces proportionately or disproportionately. And a thorough investigation need to find out the respective wholesale accountability and responsibility, not only of the state agencies, but also the non-state actors, likely those Boishamya Birodhi Andolons, or the members of Jamaat Islam, or the members of miscreants, BNPs, or many other deep state forces. You need to find it out. And by now, it is being clear-cut. All these, actors and catalysts involved in this process. So out of this concocted evidences, this trial, this ICT, for which we could have easily taken proud. We are proud of that, because in 1973, in the world scenario, at the national level, Bangladesh was the only country who enacted this law. After Nuremberg Principle, after Tokyo experience, Bangladesh was the first country to enact this kind of law. But it could not come into force because of the then geopolitical scenario, and obviously for some practical reasons, right? But they have now totally changed the skeleton of the law and is doing a disservice to the jus cogens responsibility of Bangladesh. You know what? The police chief, his testimony has been relied upon, I guess, 60 to 70% to convict Sheikh Hasina. Now, tell me that why on earth the Prime Minister should only order the police chief where there is the National Steering Committee of the law and order situation, and his testimony is not being corroborated by the members of the other members of the national law and order situation? Can this evidence be relied upon at all? So this is there was no corroborative evidence. So when an accomplice is being relied upon, the law puts a higher threshold that you must observe highest standard of care before relying upon its evidence, whereas it has not been actually corroborated. Within 1 week of the final hearing, the judgment has been handed down. So these are some. You tell. Is there any really an option for doing an appeal against this decision? No. because the appellate division itself is reconstituted by the mob violence. Not only the ICT, but also the higher judiciary has been totally reconstituted by the members, as judges, only prescribed by the student violating groups. They are not properly appointed by the president according to the constitution. And this appellate division, by a rare exercise of review power, have reversed their earlier decision, in ATM Azhar's case, who was accused of the 1971, was convicted in the 1971 crimes. So easily giving the message that they are not there to use it in a politically vindictive way. So in this way, I see that the ICT has been actually one of the major devices, weapon to vindicate, to realize the political game of this interim administration. Now, you can also refer the trial in absentia matter. Even the lawyer was not communicated by the accused at all. He merely gave a oral service to the tribunal. And he was found in a very jolly mood when Sheikh Hasina was convicted, right? And the standards set by the ICC, ICTR, ICTY, you name any other international and hybrid tribunals, the absentia threshold was not actually fulfilled, was not actually complied with. No notice, effective notice was served. So if that is the case, even in choosing the language and approach, the tribunal was vindictive and retributive. Sheikh Hasina was indicted 6 months jail for a contempt allegation. Why? Because she thought, well, how can I commit 227 murders in a single hand? And for that comment, allegedly, without any verification, she was handed down 6 months contempt, 6 months in prison for contempt of the court, right? Now, they have relied upon the phone call evidences. The Prime Minister is hard to call to the Vice Chancellor, telling that, well, the same fate they will embrace, which has been embraced by the war criminals of 1971. Now, what kind of malicious intention can you see in this apparently neutral conversation? How can you hand down death sentence about this? How can you be sure that a murder has taken place in Rangpur following this conversation between a Vice Chancellor and the Prime Minister? No nexus. It is not established. A common responsibility. Totally misapplication and wrong application of the things. It's a forceful application of the law, of the evidences. I can tell you many points. So let me conclude by saying a few points about the election. It is not an election at all. They have placed two things, opposite two things on the same day, a referendum and election. Political parties have their own agenda, but referendum, they have either signed it or have kept reservation. Now, tell me what will happen if a political party does not believe in the content of the referendums. The government itself is not elected and they are arranging the referendum. Constitution does not supporting they are arranging this referendum. So what kind of word can you use for this? It is not enough to use the word illegitimate. It is unconstitutional and unacceptable, unheard of in any canons of law and jurisprudence and legal science. So what to do, I'm not sure, but time will say. All I can say that this is not the right thing, and this election is not going to solve the problem of Bangladesh, the problem of lawlessness, the horrific state we are going through. The minority rights, the women rights, the rise of fundamentalism, all will be acute even after the election. All I can say that the ban upon the major political parties should be uplifted. A free, fair, transparent, participatory, including all the political parties, under a neutral government, even under the caretaker government, which has been revived by the verdict of the Higher Court recently, but has been made ineffective again by the Yunus regime. So while I can say this is not the right thing, and through this conference, I want to reiterate on the principle that electoral integrity be maintained. Bangladesh's founding principle should be upheld, and the international community also should press Bangladesh to obey its international obligations and human rights obligations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your enlightening words, Dr. Billah. We really appreciate you, our distinguished final and last speaker of this webinar today. Before we go into the Q&A, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers today. I'm just going to name you all. Chris Blackburn, thank you very much. Professor Dr. Habibe Millat, thank you very much to you. Natalia Sineaeva-Pankowska, thank you very much to you also. Professor Zobaida Nasreen and Paulo Casaca, and Professor Masum Billah. Thank you all for your contributions and enlightening words. We really, really appreciate it. I'm sure there was a lot of learning here today on this webinar. I would now like to ask our chair, Dewan Gous Sultan, to do the concluding Q&A session and closing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamanna, for your moderating. I'd like to thank all our speakers for their very thoughtful discussion in this afternoon. If you can refer to one or two things Dr. Billah said. He said about the ICT that we were proud of ICT to be the first country of its kind to have this sort of law, and now it is doing a disservice. Many things I could not note everything, but I think it was very thoughtful explanation. What he said about the referendum, there is a saying in Bangla, ek hate dake ar ek hate na, calling by one hand and saying no by the other. So this referendum, as he has explained, they're inviting people to come and give your opinion to a referendum and saying no to everything but a yes to what subject we don't know. We expected to have a question and answer session. I don't think I have got much of the questions, but there is a point raised by one of our viewers. He said, mention Saqib Al-Hassan, the world-renowned cricketer. May I ask Dr. Millat to shed some light on this topic, please, on cricket and Saqib Al-Hassan. Dr. Professor Millat, please.
Thank you. Saqib Al-Hassan, we are proud of him because he was the well-known champion in the cricket, all-rounder. He was visiting abroad at the time, was July-August 2024. Initially, he was about to come to the home, and then he was accused of murder cases. He could come. Then he was banned from playing cricket in Bangladeshi team. And even he was prevented to participate many events if he wanted to come to the country, but they didn't welcome. And the issue was there with the sports minister or sports advisor at the moment, Asif Mahmoud Shajib Bhuiya. He made he makes sure that he cannot come to country, and if he comes, he has to face the consequence of law, and also he was sacked from the team. That's much I can tell you.
And I think he was also accused of some murder charges.
Murder charges. Yeah, I told you that initially, that he was charged as murder while he was staying abroad.
While he was away out of the country.
Yeah, he was out of country. I mean, he doesn't know anything about that. He was still accused of murder. And the charge is preparing, including his name, that in primary investigation, he was found guilty. So this is the situation happening in Bangladesh at the moment.
This report of OHCHR, Office of High Commissioner of Human Rights, Volker took, this is being discussed in a seminar or something like that, I think, right at the moment while we are having this seminar. I don't know if any can shed some light on that. But if I go back to Chris Blackburn being the first speaker, he spoke, and we all the speakers spoke after him. So if he likes to add something on the basis of the speakers who delivered their ideas and speeches later on, Chris Blackburn, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think this interim government from the get-go was all about revenge, and symbology. It was about attacking sort of Bangladesh's history, and we saw the attack on Monday 32 and all others. We saw that Toby Cadman, somebody who'd worked as a lobbyist and defense counsel for Jamaat-e-Islami, was given an advisor role at the ICTB. So we had, and not only that, we had Hafizat-e-Islam's former VP was given a position of being the sort of the religious advisor to the government. So it was basically from the get-go, the interim government was about revenge. What we've seen over the last sort of year and a bit is it's chaos. We expected Muhammad Yunus as being the sort of the Nobel laureate to be this major figure who would come in and dot the I's, cross the T's, and make sort of Bangladesh a technocratic government that would follow law, and it hasn't. And I think that's been the major disappointment, especially for those who are more neutral in Europe and in the diplomatic community. Everybody knows what's been happening in Bangladesh. Nobody's sort of naive to what has taken place. And I think the danger for me is these nations do need to be a bit more sort of forthright and direct with Bangladesh. And I think we've seen in the last sort of few months that the British politicians are more involved now with what's happening in Bangladesh. So I think that the sort of that we've seen the interim government say, oh, this is all just right-wing Indian media or Awami League propaganda. But we know that's simply not true, and especially with the Pope mentioning the plight of Christians in Bangladesh and attacks on churches, that this isn't a right-wing Indian or pro-Awami League propaganda narrative. It's there's some serious problems happening in Bangladesh. And I think a lot of people are fearing for the future.
Thank you very much. I think there was another question raised by one of our viewers is to suggest how to come out of this situation in Bangladesh. And I think Dr. Billah has quite clearly, and some other speakers also mentioned this, that from this situation, a free, fair, inclusive election through a neutral government is the primary need that we require to get out of this situation. If I can read some of the comments, Control, if you could show some of the comments made by our viewers, let's see how it was and get it known to others.
In the meantime, just interview for a second that, the narrative of participatory and inclusive election has changed for Bangladesh. As far as we know, through the international community or international organization, they said that participation of all political parties. Now they created a stand that the narrative is that the participatory of all sectors or all spectrum of people. They don't mention about the political parties. So it's a part of plan they are now trying to implement. That's what I think in that view. So, it's probably Paulo or Chris or Dr. Billah can shed some light on that, why they changed the narrative of this participatory election?
I think, I'll come to the speakers. I think it is only a clever way of saying same thing in a different way. If you want to have all the people to say, people is represented by political parties. So all people can say when all political parties allowed to say. So it doesn't matter which way you explain it. All means all, which means not to exclude any. If I, for example, as you said, you are from Sirajganj, if I say we all Bangladeshi are here and we don't want people from Sirajganj, then no way we are all Bangladeshi. Anyway, if any of the speakers would like to shed some light on this issue, as Dr. Habibe Millat has mentioned, please.
I think what the Europeans have done is, and it's an important distinction and bad, I think, ultimately for democracy and supporting Bangladesh's sort of move towards democracy or whatever is happening. They did initially say about the inclusivity meant all political parties, and because they know they're not going to get that, and that's not going to be delivered by the interim government, that they've now switched the goalposts, and that's effectively what it is. Because they can't say they won't condemn him now, so they've changed the language, and I think that's very disappointing to see for Europe. It's disgusting behaviour.
Thank you very much. I think one of our viewers has raised the point of postal vote saga. We'll come to that. And before that, if I can read this one, Afsana Salam, she made this comment. As of January 17, 2026, the escalating tension between extremist factions and the cultural heart of Bangladesh has reached a critical state. Organizations like Hifazat-e-Islam and Jamaat-e-Islami are no longer just protesting, they are actively threatening the country's secular identity, while the interim government is being accused of strategic silence or active complicity. Thank you very much, Afsana. I think there was just another comment from Dewan Fahim just a moment ago. Can I have that one, please, Control? Okay. Postal ballot, Dewan Fahim, since August 2024, we have seen a really alarming rise in fundamental forces, massive rallies pushing for Sharia law, death penalties for blasphemy, and growing attacks on minorities and secular values. Doesn't this pose a direct threat to Bangladesh's secular identity and the spirit of 1971? What can the international community do right now to push back effectively before it's too late? Thank you very much, Fahim. I think I'll put this question to who? First, Zobaida, Nasreen, please. You've been talking about this value, what the international community can do, or we can ask them to do to maintain our secular values and not to reverse it.
Thank you very much for upholding the question and just inquiries. And we already spoken about the situation of Bangladesh, and the question is how we can actually convince the international community to push the agenda forward or to rescue our potential heritage or the spirit of liberation war. I think, it's a very valid and timely needed and important issue that I can push. But I'm not sure the international organizations or international bodies that are interested to discuss about this matter. But within the time, I don't think so that there is a totally silent. They are totally in silence. They I have gone through some of the articles and reporting just produced in many countries, though it is not a like a not a huge in huge, but they are they are continuing their protest, and they are talking about that they just pick the issues and put it forward for open discussion. However, because the situation we have going through, it also even very international issue. International groups, their interest are concerned, are connected with the UNO's interest. Therefore, it is not a easy way thought that we can pursue to the international audience to work for it. However, I think the lobby is needed to forward these issues to get more discussion further.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Natalia, would you like to add anything from international perspective for Bangladesh to get out of this situation and to against reversing the secular principles of the country? In a minute or so, please.
First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers. It was very enriching discussion also for me. I learned a lot from you. And what I think now, I think it's very important to raise awareness on a global level for those who don't have knowledge about region, about Bangladesh. And of course, we can learn a lot also from Bangladesh history. What we know about Bangladesh, about the secularism, and it can be also very useful and interesting for others to learn. So I think this is very important to learn and also to raise global awareness.
Thank you. Thank you very much. About this postal vote saga, we have seen all over the world, it has been published that this is first time Bangladesh is arranging postal vote. The candidate list is not final yet, but they have dispatched the ballot paper. And more important to note that the ballot paper was sent in such a way that people are getting together, looting the ballot papers, and don't know what or what the arrangement was. There is no candidate's name, there's some symbols, and I don't know how they have been maintaining the secrecy of the vote. Or, for example, in my constituency, if a ballot paper is given to me, I don't know, I think all the symbols had been there. I may not have 70 or 80% of the symbols representing a candidate, but I have been given the ballot. And isn't it so likely that any vote given to a wrong symbol, which is very likely, that the vote is being wasted? Can I ask Paulo Casaca to shed some light on this postal ballot that is happening in Bangladesh and what we have seen so far? Any comment, please, in short?
I've been reading a bit about it, but I think that Dr. Billah is certainly the person that can explain the issue in legal terms, because I have not seen the ballots.
I see.
But I do think that an issue that we have to come to terms with is that the international community has a prime responsibility on what happened. Obviously, that was the international community that made a lot of pressure for the BNP to boycott the election. The international community continues to say things that are absolutely idiotic, like this inclusive, that they said, no, it's not inclusive because BNP did not accept to participate, so the elections are not inclusive. Now, Awami League is forbidden, not only forbidden, I mean, people are shot at, imprisoned, and so on. I mean, and it's inclusive. Oh, because what the parties. I mean, it's really unbelievable what the international community is doing here. And I think it is a major playing field of what we will have to do in the future, the international community.
Thank you very much. I think we have got a question now from Mr. Ali Zaman. Excellent discussion. Thanks to all the respected speakers. My question to Mr. Billah: as the Yunus regime wrongly using ICT against such a prominent politicians and the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, and the other members of her cabinet, are there any initiative taken by United Nations, European Community, or any other international organization to stop it? Dr. Billah, that's a question to you, please.
Okay. So until the verdict was pronounced, I'm afraid that international bodies didn't know much about what is going on in the name of trial by the ICT. But when researchers group, professors, online activists, they pointed out some of the fatal blows of the process of the law, and some reports have come out how the law has been misused, how concocted evidence have been relied upon. We have drawn attention of the international community, of the international organizations. Many organizations have raised their concerns. For example, the Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch, and the UN body itself has raised concerns about the trial process. Particularly, they have severely, harshly criticized handing down death sentence, as well as questioned the validity of the due process. So the international body has sharply criticized the ICT in Bangladesh. They cannot directly interfere upon the internal affairs of some country, but obviously, if there is a grave violation of human rights, if there is a grave compromise of international standards, they can step in. At least they can discourage the government not to violate the law. So yes, there are concerns from international community as well.
Thank you very much. I think there was a 5 congressmen from the United States. They have raised their concern about what is happening in Bangladesh and asked for inclusive election. The shadow Home Secretary of UK MP, she was Home Secretary before, she has written to the government to give a clarification of what is happening in Bangladesh. In this regard, can I ask the control to show us the question raised by Prashanto Purakasto, please? There is a question from Prashanto Purakasto. Can you go back to that? Yeah, Prashanto Purakasto. My question to the learned panel is, what is the way of protecting minorities, especially singled out Hindu like 1971 in Bangladesh by international human rights legalization? Is it right?
Legislation.
Young people have been killed by torturing, lynching, and shooting in the last 3 weeks only. Law enforcing forces are maintaining silence and blind eyes. Can I ask Dr. Millat to shed some light on this question, please, on this situation?
He is absolutely right. It's not only that, within the last 16 months, 116 minorities have been killed by lynching, hacking, torturing in different ways. And law enforcement authority are not actively involved at all. And they are, especially the police is feared of the pressure group, which is Tawhidi Janata or anti-discriminatory student movement members. Because, and also Jamaat Islam, they are controlling the country, they are controlling the law enforcement authorities, they are controlling the court. So nothing is happening without their permission. If anything goes wrong against any minorities or in favor of secularism or in favor of 1971, our liberation war, that will be investigated or not investigated, punished without any evidence. But if anything happened against those people who is doing this is sort of mob lynching, killing, and rape, nothing is happening because law is in their favor, court is in their favor. So it's not only the minorities, more than 600 people have been killed over last 17 months because of as a not extrajudicial, but as a they killed different ways, and 85 people have been extrajudicially killed. 231 Awami League leaders and associated organization leaders and activists has been killed. There are 35 killing inside the prison, but nobody has done any investigation, and they are getting immunity or indemnity about that. The police has been killed, hundreds of police has been missing. There is no investigation, no judiciary cases. Nothing has happening in Bangladesh because of, if it happen, it will go against interim government, it will go against the student, it will go against Jamaat and BNP. So if anything goes against them, they will not do anything. And as a postal ballot, I just wanted to mention that we saw many videos in abroad that they are distributing the postal ballots, and the way they place the Jamaati and students symbol in the first line, and the other party like Popular Party, BNP, they're in a way that if they fold the postal ballot, they cannot see the symbol. So that's a part of conspiracy they are doing at the moment. In any way, they want to do an election, and they want to pass this referendum that Bangladeshi constitution, 1971, 72 constitution will be changed according to their own rule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think time is well over our scheduled time. There are some more comments. I could not read them all, but definitely I do thank all the viewers who have taken the trouble of sending the comments. I would request you all, this situation in Bangladesh needs help from outside world. We are not in a position to help us enough to get out of this. And the viewers can help by spreading this, by sharing this. And we being a civil society, we can always only try to get the message across to the bigger society, to the democratic and consensus people of the world. And I hope they will come sooner than later, that they will rise up, they will raise their voice, and someone somewhere will listen to get us out of this shambles situation. I'd like to thank all the speakers once again, and Tamanna and all my friends who have been with us to organize this. I hope it was quite a fruitful one, and thank you very much for your participation. Thank you. Goodbye. Joy Bangla.
Thank you. Bye.